3 constantly high slackers, a dead-end telemarketing job, and a whole lot of horrible people. Workaholics was one of the best shows about a group of dudes doing a lot of nothing. Now that Blake, Adam, and Durs have said goodbye to Rancho Cucamonga, it's time to take a look back at everything that made Workaholics possible.
You gotta be first.
Come together. A couple of the Workaholics creators have been making each other laugh since they were little kids. Kyle Newacek, the guy who plays drug dealer Carl on the show, and Blake Anderson grew up together in Northern California. Their first collaboration was an elementary school-era comic called Funyun Protectors, about anthropomorphic Funyun snack rings who were also superheroes. They started performing together in high school and after graduation moved to Orange County to attend community college, which is where they met Adam Devine in an improv class. Anders Holm joined the group when he met Devine at Second City in Los Angeles. The next step, making web videos. Mail order comedy. Back in 2006, they launched their mail order comedy sketch group, which was fairly successful, even before they landed on TV. They had a bunch of comedy shows, did tours, and were basically going places. Among their creative YouTube ventures and their own website, they created 2 MySpace-exclusive comedy shows. Remember MySpace? If you do, you're probably old.
Hi, my name's Jasmine and I'm on MySpace. I know we've never met before, but we should meet because we live close to one another. Is this a scam?
Once upon a time, it was Facebook of its day, so it hosted a lot of exclusive media, including music, comics, and even web series, like the ones the Workaholics guys did. Special Delivery was a prank show, because every comic has to get the prank stuff out of their system at one point or another. Crossbows and Mustaches was an action comedy show that combined 2 of the finest things ever created by mankind. Of course, MySpace couldn't last forever, so the mail order comedy team went on to make bigger and better things, experimenting with the ideas that would eventually become Workaholics. The Flophouse. While taping the first season of Workaholics, Adam and Blake were convinced that the show was going to be a flop. To save money for the rainy days ahead, they actually lived in the disgusting party house where the show was taped, while Anders lived in a real home with his girlfriend. Devine and Anderson moved out when the show's success enabled them to afford proper shelter, but Anderson says the old place has become a flop house where their friends and family have crashed. Anderson's younger brother lived there for a while, as did Devine's best friend from high school. Nevertheless, Devine says the place remains infested with giant newborn-sized rats.
There was one, 24-hour period that we killed something like 18 rats.
Yeah. We call it the night of many kills.
Of many kills.
Yeah.
It's Always Sunny in Rancho, a show about a bunch of terrible people doing horrible things. Of course Workaholics is called an It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia ripoff, which is basically a Seinfeld ripoff anyhow. Workaholics has been called that since before it even aired, and that was by the creators. Even better, they said it straight to the cast of Sunny. According to a MovieWeb interview with Blake, before the show even aired, the cast of Workaholics drunkenly rushed up to the cast of Sunny at a Comic-Con party to tell them that their upcoming show was basically a ripoff. For what it's worth, the Sunny crew reacted positively, and if there was ever any doubt, Sunny's Glenn Howerton cast it aside on Twitter. Straight out of Mordor, the Season 1 episode, Muscle I'd Like to Flex, begins with a stylishly shot rap video sequence in which the guys perform a song about being wizards while dressed in long robes, beards, and floppy hats.
Don't make this wizard mad, don't make this wizard pissed. I could kill a hill giant with the flick of my wrist.
In the plot of the show, they're rehearsing for a performance at a Renaissance fair, but the wizard rap shtick isn't new. Under the name The Wizards, they recorded and released a full album of wizard rap called Purple Magic in 2009. In fact, they wanted to pitch a show to Comedy Central about gangsta wizards before a network executive told them to go with their other idea, a show about slackers instead. Pong Gone Wrong. In 2011, Blake Anderson lived out a real-life event that sounds like it could have happened on an episode of Workaholics. At a wild house party in Los Angeles, he raised the stakes in a game of beer pong by attempting to dunk a ping pong ball by jumping off a roof. The whole thing was captured on video and ghoulishly sold to TMZ.
Hey, Blake!
The accident resulted in a pretty serious spine fracture.
Well, he broke his back, for those of you that don't...
Napped it.
Whoopsies!
He's got that Dr. Octagon spine now.
I do.
Anderson underwent back surgery, but made a full recovery and didn't miss a single episode of playing a character who would have done the same thing. Arrested Development. One of the most surprising cameos on Workaholics came courtesy of Mitch Hurwitz, TV writer and creator of Arrested Development. After the first season of Workaholics aired, he contacted the troupe and told them they were doing great work and that he'd like to be a part of it in any way. They offered Hurwitz the opportunity to write an episode, but he wanted a chance to act. So they wrote the part of Cool Eric, the human resources guy, for him.
I love people, to say that another way. I love people. And that one's got a little more fun to it.
Hurwitz later repaid the favor by casting the three main stars of Workaholics in cameo roles as airline employees in the 2013 revival of Arrested Development. The end. Despite the fact that Comedy Central probably would have let the series live forever, Anderson, Holm, Devine, and Newacek all decided that the 7th season of Workaholics would be the last. In a statement, the crew thanked Comedy Central, its executives, and the show's fans, quote, for turning us from boys to men. It was an incredible run, but we've decided to leave on a high note. Get it? End quote. While the show has ended, the team's collaborative efforts have not. They're working on an action comedy film called Game Over Man for Netflix, and the conclusion of their show will leave them more time to focus on bigger projects. Written by Anders Holm, the movie has been described as an action comedy akin to Die Hard in a Hotel, which honestly sounds pretty fresh.
Archer burst onto the scene in 2009.
Hey, phrasing!
Winning a loyal FX audience and rave reviews from critics. Adam Reed's spy spoof mixed James Bond with The Simpsons and the quick-fire bite of Arrested Development. With the time-hopping 8th season going full-on film noir, it's a perfect time to head into the danger zone.
Danger zone!
And reveal some facts you may not have known about Archer. The ghost behind the spy. Way back in 1994, Cartoon Network took a chance on an insane idea, a cartoon talk show hosted by a throwaway superhero from the 1960s. That's what gave birth to Space Ghost Coast to Coast. That was the show that eventually spawned the insanity of the Adult Swim programming block, which has since become a cultural force on television. But it also led to the insanity of Archer many years later.
This is about conducting espionage operations for years with no authority or permission whatsoever from the United States government.
Wait, what? Mother?
Archer showrunner Adam Reed got his start working on Space Ghost as a writer during seasons 4 through 6. Reed then got to make his own show, C-Lab 2021, a parody straight out of the Space Ghost school of spoofing Hanna-Barbera cartoons. The original 1972 show was C-Lab 2020, an animated series set in the then-distant future where scientists lived under the sea and... that's all anyone remembers, because the show lasted less than 3 months. Reed's parody had a longer life, and for good reason. It was hilarious and very Archer.
Who needs X-ray vision? They'll beg to show their to my robot.
All that spoofing of 60s and 70s cartoons sharpened Reed's comic voice, leading to Archer, and thus a legend was born. Let's be real. Reed and executive producer Matt Thompson used the real-life faces of friends, acquaintances, and industry pros from their home base of Atlanta to create the look of many Archer characters. As Vulture reported in 2013, Mallory Archer is based on Atlanta actress and Jessica Walter doppelganger Kathleen Cohen. Sterling Archer comes from model Jason Fitzgerald, Atlanta antiques dealer Candy McElhannon is the face of Pam, and Kenyetta Lester, a Hooters waitress Reed met after a monster truck rally, serves as the model for Lana. While Chris Parnell looks a lot like the character he voices, Cyril, he's actually not the model. Instead, the animators turned to Atlanta restaurateur Stuart Fearman for inspiration. Then there's Lucky Yates. He voices Krieger, but he's actually the facial inspiration for Ray, who's in turn played by show creator Adam Reed. Confusing enough?
What are we thinking? What are we doing?
What are we wearing?
My crisis vest, Mr. Fatface.
As for Krieger, his face belongs to Ben Brieger, Reed's former college classmate, which is how Krieger got his name. Brieger volunteered his real name, but Reed altered it slightly to give the man some dignity.
Well, at least you got some closure.
Which is more than I ever got.
Oh, you are just your mother all over!
Lucky's early years. Speaking of Lucky Yates, the voice behind Archer's mad scientist Krieger, his first high-profile acting gig was on the Food Network? It's true. Yates played a wide variety of characters on Alton Brown's wacky cooking show Good Eats, including a fishmonger, a butcher, and the infamous Dungeon Master.
You've been a very bad Dungeon Master, and as punishment, I want you to go Give him the mooch. Lucky straw.
In a Reddit Ask Me Anything, Yates had nothing but praise for Brown, saying the famous foodie is even more hilarious in real life. Crossing the line. Archer is undeniably edgy. It's violent, sexually explicit, and unafraid to poke fun at, well, just about everything.
Nice job, Oliver Cromwell.
I killed a pope.
But believe it or not, some scenarios are forbidden even on Archer. According to showrunner Adam Reed, one script had Archer disarming a terrorist by throwing his baby boy Seamus at him. This didn't sit well with the folks at FX, who told Reed, "We're not a network that throws babies." A bold stance. It wasn't the only time FX put up a fight. In Season 2, a young German girl hits on Archer, and in the original script, she was only 14. FX said that was not okay. Eventually, the two sides came to an agreement, settling for 16. Amazingly, the age issue actually made it onto the show.
I am from Germany, where the age of consent is 14.
What is it, the Alabama of Europe?
In many ways, yes.
Archer imitating life. In Season 4, Mallory Archer married a car dealership owner named Ron Cadillac, much to the chagrin of Sterling Archer. Cadillac is voiced by Ron Liebman, who is not only Rachel's awful dad on Friends,
Why would you bring me sewage?
but is also actually married to Jessica Walter, who voices Mallory. The thespian couple has been hitched since 1983 and were both known more for their dramatic work until late into their careers.
I don't know how to wrestle.
Well, that's all right. She'll show you.
Right, boss.
Mallory Archer would never stand for that. Krieger's Codes. When it comes to hidden jokes and messages, Archer is nearly unmatched. Take, for example, the elaborate Easter egg leading fans to Krieger's secret website. It's complicated, but here's the gist. In Season 6, there's a brief shot of serial numbers associated with the character Conway Stern. If you plug that number into something called a hex code translator, you get the address for a YouTube video. From there, you have to fall far down the rabbit hole to get to Krieger's site, including translating the sound in the YouTube clip into an additional code. Then using that code to make your way to a fake Craigslist ad, crack some more codes, and on and on. Once you arrive, the username and password is, hilariously, Krieger and guest. Once you're logged in, you can play games, view images, and download Krieger's actual in-show ringtone, Teutonic Butts.
I tried Cyril, Pam, Cheryl, now I'm even trying Krieger.
Where the hell is everybody?
It's a fitting, thoroughly bonkers tribute to a thoroughly bonkers character.
Smoke bomb!
In 1989, Matt Groening launched The Simpsons. 10 years later, he created another animated comedy classic, Futurama. The series centered around a late 20th century pizza delivery boy named Philip J. Fry, who gets stuck in a cryogenic freezing pod on December 31st, 1999, and wakes up in the strange, futuristic world of New York in the year 3000. Futurama had a devoted audience that stuck with the show for over a decade. And now?
Good news, everyone!
Here are some amazing stories you might not have known about Futurama. A different name. Futurama was, in retrospect, the perfect title for a show about the amazing world of tomorrow. Still, creator Matt Groening had some other names that he liked better. On the first season DVD director's commentary, Groening says that his first ideas for the show's name were Aloha Mars and Doomsville, but both titles were met with indifference. The title they eventually settled on was lifted from the 1939 to 1940 New York World's Fair, where visitors lined up for the General Motors Pavilion and its exhibit called Futurama. Fairgoers were welcomed to the world of tomorrow, a glimpse into the far-off futuristic year of 1960.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Why do you always have to say it that way?
Haven't you ever heard of a little thing called showmanship?
Fry and Homer. On Matt Groening's first show, The Simpsons, several of the main characters were named after Groening's immediate family. For example, Homer and Marge Simpson got their names from Groening's parents. Futurama's lead character, Philip J. Fry, was also named after Groening's father. Philip was his middle name. This means that Homer Philip Groening, who died in 1996, had the unique distinction of lending his name to two major cartoon characters. The voice of Bender. Bender Bending Rodriguez, the sociopathic, alcohol-fueled bending robot, is probably Futurama's most beloved character.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
It doesn't look so shiny to me.
Shinier than yours, meatbag.
Voice actor John DiMaggio discussed his inspiration for Bender's voice on the Kevin Pollak chat show.
It was part like drunk at the end of the bar. It was part Slim Pickens.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what the hell in the wide, wide world of sports is it going on?
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here?
Throw that in there, and then you throw. There was a guy my friend Ralph Colomino used to do in college, and it was this Charlie the Sausage Lover guy. He loved sausages. You have all kinds of sausages. You have hot sausages, you have hot tight sausages, sweet Italian sausages, hot Italian sausages. Germans, they have wursts. They have all kind of wursts. And he would just list more and more sausages. It was ridiculous. And so it was like you threw all that together in a blender, and that's how you get Bender. And
Interestingly, DiMaggio also said he auditioned for the role of Professor Farnsworth with the same voice.
Good news, everyone!
Of course, he didn't get the part. Probably for the best.
Why not Zoidberg?
Voice actor Billy West pulled from two major old-timey inspirations to create Dr. Zoidberg. Actor and host George Jessel.
I certainly want to thank Phil for that warm introduction. I was listening to it for a minute and I thought I was dead.
And actor Lou Jacoby.
Why? I just caught the 745 elevator down from 6.
Both of those inspirations definitely give a Jewish and a Yiddish flavor to the character, which West says he thought was appropriate, given the traditionally Jewish Berg suffix of the name. Zoid, meanwhile, is a futuristic alien-sounding word that has personal significance for Futurama producer and writer David X. Cohen, who, while in high school, created a computer game named Zoid. He submitted it to Broderbund Software, which not only rejected it, but spelled Cohen wrong in the rejection letter, which seems like something that could happen to Dr. Zoidberg. Casting Phil Hartman. The late, great Phil Hartman specialized in playing characters both obnoxious and oblivious, such as Bill McNeil on News Radio. He also voiced a sleazy lawyer Lionel Hutz and washed-up actor Troy McClure on Matt Groening's other show, The Simpsons. So it makes perfect sense that Hartman had been cast to provide the voice of obnoxious Captain Kirk-esque spaceship captain Zap Brannigan on Futurama. But after Hartman's tragic murder in 1998, Billy West stepped into the role. He'd once talked with Hartman over their shared love of old-time radio announcers that had big, booming voices, as well as a huge sense of self-importance. So, West performed Zap Brannigan in that style as a tribute to Hartman, or at least how he thought Hartman would have done the voice.
Why is it still blurry?
That's all the resolution we have. Making it bigger doesn't make it clearer.
It does on CSI Miami.
Ugh.
It's the Beastie Boys. Futurama's producers really wanted to line up one of the most popular rap groups of the 20th century, the Beastie Boys, to play themselves in the 31st century. Too bad it never actually happened. According to the DVD commentary for the episode Hell is Other Robots, in which Fry, Bender, and Leela go see the heads of the Beastie Boys in concert, writer-producers Ken Keeler and David X. Cohen went to New York to meet with the Beastie Boys, but never managed to connect. Eventually, the band members were recorded doing their vocals separately. Well, Adam Ad-Rock Horowitz and Michael Mike D. Diamond recorded their tracks. Adam MCA York had a scheduling conflict, so Ad-Rock just did his lines for him. Even after all that, the group wasn't entirely happy with the material that Futurama writers had prepared. In the finished episode, the Beastie Boys perform a portion of their 1994 hit Sabotage a cappella.
Oh my, it's a mirage, telling you all it's a sabotage.
They'd initially been asked to do their 1987 hit You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party in this style, but refused. Nevertheless, there were apparently no hard feelings because the group gave a bit of a shout out to Futurama on their 2009 single, Too Many Rappers. One of the song's lyrics says that they'll still be in the rap game until the year 3000 and beyond. The Sad Truth of Seymour. Futurama was always meant to be a comedy, but some episodes would occasionally touch on Fry's sadness and the loss of being stuck in the future, having left his life and the loved ones behind. The 2002 episode Jurassic Bark is one of those episodes. While visiting a museum, Fry discovers the fossilized remains of his 20th century dog, Seymour. Professor Farnsworth tells Fry that he could feasibly take some of Seymour's DNA and create a clone. During the cloning process, Fry learns that Seymour lived to be 15. He figures that after he disappeared in 1999, Seymour must have lived a long, happy life without him. And then, the saddest flashback ever broadcast on television appeared. Seymour didn't move on. He waited for Fry outside the pizzeria where he used to work for more than a decade. The episode ends with Seymour closing his eyes, passing away, and everyone watching in tears. Amazingly, this episode could have been even sadder. As revealed in the episode's DVD commentary, the writers toyed around with Fry finding the remains of his mother, and are then considering but ultimately dismissing cloning her. That didn't stop them from taking a tear-jerking dive into Fry's mommy issues in another episode, of course.
Oh man, your arms.
I can't stand to see him like this. I'll push him off the roof.
From biblical symbolism to public meltdowns to misleading negotiations, a lot has gone into the history of 2.5 Men. And you'll never believe one risque favor Jon Cryer actually asked of his co-star. It isn't unusual for pilots to feature different actors from the final cast announced for a series. Quite often, these standalone episodes act as a proof of concept, and no one can predict if a network will pick the series up. In fact, many pilots go completely unaired. In the case of 2.5 Men, the original pilot, Most Chicks Won't Eat Veal, featured Blythe Danner in the role of Evelyn Harper, the matriarch of the family. Despite the pilot's success, the Emmy Award-winning actress didn't stick around when the sitcom was picked up by CBS. According to showrunner Chuck Lorre, the role just wasn't perfect for the actress, so she was replaced by Holland Taylor.
You stay out of this. I'm here to help your brother through a very difficult time. How could you do this to me?
However, some rumors suggest that Danner was actually dismissed after she insisted on making changes to some scenes that didn't sit well with the producers of the show. Replacing a star like Charlie Sheen isn't easy, yet the show was determined to soldier on without him and sign up another actor to star alongside Jon Cryer in 2.5 Men. Before Ashton Kutcher hopped on board, there were several other actors being considered for the sitcom. One of the biggest names mentioned was Hugh Grant, who was reportedly offered a sizable paycheck for the role, according to Deadline. In an interview with Howard Stern, Grant revealed that he was contacted about a part on the show but turned it down. He explained that at the time he was offered the part, the showrunners had not written a script with the new character and asked Grant to take a leap of faith to accommodate their production schedule. Despite being a fan of the show, Grant's caution prevailed and he declined the part.
They make brilliant TV shows, really, but I said I'm too scared to sign up without a script.
He joked to Stern that he does regret not getting the paycheck when he realized how much TV stars earned in the US. Charlie Sheen's departure from 2.5 Men was quite the event, making headlines around the world and inspiring a generation of quality memes and hashtags. In the years afterward, though, many fans held on to a glimmer of hope that he'd patch up his differences with Chuck Lorre and have one last rodeo on the show. As it turns out, he nearly did. For the series finale, the producers reached out to him about a potential appearance. The plan was always to drop a piano on Charlie Harper's head. However, Sheen wasn't interested in this particular ending, pitching his own suggestion. A scene that sets up a spin-off sitcom called The Harpers, which would have starred him and Jon Cryer. After the debacle that happened between Sheen and everyone else involved on 2.5 Men, let's just say that no one jumped at his idea. So the episode went ahead with Lorre's original ending and without a cameo from Sheen. While 2.5 Men focused on the shenanigans caused by Charlie and Alan Harper, the heart of the show was Jake, who was played by Angus T. Jones. From his pitch-perfect comedic timing to his undisputed chemistry with his illustrious co-stars, the 9-year-old Jones took all the acclamation right from the get-go.
You get no allowance. That's your punishment for gambling.
Told you he'd do that.
Yeah, you did.
Fans might expect that the casting for the part of Jake was a long, arduous process, but it wasn't. In fact, Chuck Lorre told Foundation interviews that Jones was the first and only child actor to audition for the role. The showrunner added that he had seen Jones's performance as Hunter Morris in 2002's The Rookie and invited him to read for the role of Jake. After seeing how much fun Jones was having in the audition process and how nonchalant he was about the whole thing, the decision to cast him was an easy one. It's no secret that the line where Charlie Sheen ended and Charlie Harper began was a blurred one. At times, many fans didn't know if Sheen was simply playing a character or himself. However, there was a particular moment off-screen when the actor acted exactly like his TV personality by lending a hand to Jon Cryer in his time of need. In his autobiography, So That Happened, Cryer admitted that he was in a difficult place after his divorce. He decided to hire a sex worker, and Sheen provided his co-star with expert advice on the industry. Cryer went on to explain, Charlie suggested a few online purveyors he occasionally used, as this was when prostitution was gaining a foothold on the internet. He and I had different tastes, so I didn't go with his exact recommendations. In another case of life imitating art, Cryer revealed that he once brought a girlfriend to the set only to be told by Sheen that he'd dated her in the past and that they'd broken up because she wouldn't allow him to bring another partner into the relationship. When Ashton Kutcher joined 2.5 Men, it surprised many people, including the actor himself. Kutcher was a big movie star who was proving himself a bankable name in the industry, so returning to the sitcom world where he got his start seemed like a backward move. In an interview with Howard Stern, Kutcher disclosed exactly what swayed his decision to take the role of Walden Schmidt. His previous agent worked for William Morris Endeavor, a company that was heavily involved with 2.5 Men. At the time Kutcher was considering signing on, the show was on track for syndication. If it was renewed for 2 more seasons, everyone involved could expect a very nice payday. Kutcher revealed that when he found out Charlie Sheen was making $1.8 million an episode, he told his agent he'd take the job if he could get a similar deal. Reportedly, Kutcher didn't get the same offer as Sheen, but the rate he was offered was clearly lucrative enough to attach him to the sitcom for a full 4 seasons.
I made $1 billion doing this.
Billionaire entrepreneur Walden Schmidt made his debut in season 9 of 2.5 Men, where he buys Charlie Harper's beach house and becomes Alan's new best friend and eventual husband. According to Ashton Kutcher, though, the character of Walden evolved quite a bit. In an interview on WTF with Mark Maron, Kutcher explained that when he met with Chuck Lorre to discuss the part of Walden, Lorre pitched a character very different from the Walden that wound up making it on screen. The actor never revealed the changes made to the character between the pitch and the first script, but he did bring up this observation to Lorre. The showrunner told him Walden's character arc was going to take some time to unfold, so Kutcher put faith in Lorre's vision and went along for the ride. Seeing how hit sitcoms such as Will and Grace and Mad About You have received revivals in recent years, many fans are wondering if there's a chance that 2.5 Men could get the same treatment, especially with the original trio reprising their iconic roles. While Charlie Sheen has pushed for it with the Harper's concept, John Cryer isn't exactly rushing back to the Malibu beach house anytime soon. When asked about his current relationship with Sheen on Access, Cryer stated, "It's kind of a roller coaster when you have Charlie in your life, and I just haven't decided to get back on that roller coaster. Maybe he needs a few extra zeros on a new contract to help twist his arm." There were several supporting characters on 2.5 Men, but none of them had the charisma or hilarity of Berta the housekeeper. Whether she was pointing out the obvious or sticking around to laugh at the Harper fallouts, the outspoken Berta never missed a beat. However, the character could have been very different if it wasn't for the late Conchata Ferrell's desire to do things her own way. In an interview with the AV Club, Ferrell explained that the showrunners had asked her to adopt an Eastern European accent when playing the character. When she went in for the audition, she told the room that despite the fact that she can do a pretty solid Russian accent, she thought that adopting a quote trailer park dialect was a better fit for the character.
Next thing I know, I'm belly up on the floor, hacking out a lung while the cops are dragging out Bonnie and Claude in handcuffs.
Ferrell's performance impressed Chuck Lorre and everyone else who decided to go along with her suggestion. In fact, they loved it so much that they extended her presence on the show far beyond the initially planned 2-episode arc. While the spotlight was firmly on Charlie Sheen during his ongoing feud with Chuck Lorre, hardly anyone ever considered what the showrunner went through as their conflict unfolded. Entertainment Weekly reports that Lorre was deeply hurt by the ordeal, so much so that he contemplated leaving 2.5 Men in 2011. Lorre recounted a conversation he had with other showrunners to TV Guide. "I offered to quit the show last winter. I said, listen, if for some reason I'm now the Antichrist, I'm happy to leave. It's not in my interest to stop the show, and I certainly don't want to put all these people out of work. Keep going, get another guy, don't stop on my account." However, CBS had Lorre's back, and he described the network's decision to fire Sheen as a choice based on ethics rather than money. Personal and professional disagreements are common in any industry, including television. Sometimes one party just might not be feeling a script or the direction in which the series is going. They can even part ways because of creative differences but still remain friends. Unfortunately, Charlie Sheen didn't get that memo. Not only did he burn his bridges with Chuck Lorre, but he also painted the town red with metaphorical tiger blood. While it appeared that Sheen would never squash his feud with Lorre, time does heal all wounds. In an interview with The Guardian, Sheen was asked about his regrets. The first thing he said was that he should have handled leaving 2.5 Men more thoughtfully. He also admitted to People that there were numerous approaches he could have taken to handle the conflict and that he's unhappy with the one he chose. Is it possible that by Sheen admitting his wrong, he and Laurie could work together again in the future? Anything is possible in Hollywood. Charlie Sheen's departure from 2.5 Men could have played out like a scene from the show. Bad vibes and verbal jabs were thrown around in the press like a game of hot potato. One of the people who caught some collateral damage in the process was Ashton Kutcher. For all intents and purposes, he'd done nothing wrong by accepting the role of Walden Schmidt in the sitcom. However, that didn't stop Sheen from taking to Twitter and insulting Kutcher on several occasions. Kutcher didn't take the attacks lying down though, and fired back when required. After a while, Sheen's comments stopped bothering him completely.
Charlie Sheen has become like a parent on Charlie Brown to me. It's more like wah 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 wah.
Years later, Sheen apologized and admitted that he shouldn't have behaved the way he did towards Kutcher. Sheen told the Kyle and Jackie O radio show, "I was stupidly mean to him because I overlooked the reality and difficulty of taking over a show." He also expressed empathy for Kutcher, explaining that he had done the same thing by taking over for Michael J. Fox on Spin City. Luckily, Sheen and Kutcher appear to have put their beef behind them. When Kutcher ran into Sheen at a baseball game, the pair even shook hands. Out of all the characters in 2.5 Men, the most memeable was Alan Harper. From him constantly forgetting his wallet to refusing to move out of his brother's Malibu beach house, Alan was the ultimate sponge. However, Chuck Lorre's initial vision for the character of Alan was very different from the one that appeared on screen. In fact, he and the show's co-creator Lee Aronson planned something of biblical proportions. In a conversation with The Hollywood Reporter, Laurie said, "Alan was always designed from the get-go to be kind of the biblical Job, the good man who is trying his best and can't catch a break. And the character has morphed over the years and become much broader." The showrunner admitted that while that was the plan, the character deviated from it as the series found its feet. Charlie, on the other hand, was supposed to be symbolic of Dionysus, the god of wine and fertility. That one seems to have stuck throughout. Charlie Harper had many lovers on 2.5 Men, but there were a select few who almost tamed the wild man. One of these individuals was Jennifer Taylor's character Chelsea. The actress had appeared on the show in smaller parts before being cast as Chelsea in season 6. What many fans don't realize is how the sitcom gave Taylor the exact professional and financial boost she needed at the time. While chatting with entertainment journalist Jeremy Roberts, Taylor opened up about how she had just given birth to her daughter and was preparing to sell her house to make ends meet when she got the part. She considered the timing a good omen and began filming for the recurring role in 2008.
It doesn't get much better than reruns of The Office, and sometimes you notice things you never caught before. From creepy clown paintings to Call of Duty screen names, here are some of the best Easter eggs to look out for the next time you settle in to watch America's favorite workplace in action. Even the most casual viewers of The Office know that the American series didn't begin with an original idea. It's a remake inspired by a British show by the same name. This original series ran from 2001 to 2003 and focused on the fictional paper company Wernham Hogg in the British town of Slough. The American show takes place in Scranton, Pennsylvania, but it still has a connection to its British cousin's hometown. In the season 5 episode Blood Drive, Michael pulls together a depressing little Valentine's Day shindig for all of his single co-workers, harboring secret hopes that he will be able to reconnect with the woman he met earlier in the day. As he shows off the flyer he's created for the event, the camera zooms in, revealing that the address for Dunder Mifflin is 1725 Slough Avenue. The address seems to be a nod to the location of the original Wernham Hogg paper company. It's not a one-time incident either. In the last episode of season 6, Dwight refers to the street by name again.
Cancel it. I want you to make an offer at 1725 Slough Avenue. Make them an offer they can't refuse.
The story of Angela and Dwight's secret love is a long one, starting early on in the show and winding through several ups and downs before they finally tie the knot, Schrute style, while standing in their own graves in the series finale. Truly, they're the show's perfect match, to the point where they even seem to have the same favorite song. It's made clear from early on that Angela is a huge fan of the Little Drummer Boy. Every time a karaoke machine is fired up, that's the song she looks for. She even asks Sandy if they can use it for their first dance when they're planning their wedding.
Is there any way our first dance can be to my favorite song? The Little Drummer Boy.
With that in mind, it's interesting that in the pilot for the show, it's none other than the assistant to the regional manager himself who is shown aggressively humming that particular carol as he sets up for work.
No gifts for you,
Does this imply that the relationship between the two goes back even further than the beginning of the show? Either way, the connection seems too clear to be an accident. The whole teapot episode in Season 2 is an iconic moment in the Pam and Jim timeline. After Michael turns a simple Secret Santa Christmas party into an impromptu white elephant gift swap, Jim is frustrated to find that his romantically intentioned teapot gift for Pam has fallen into the hands of his nemesis, Dwight.
Get sinus infections, and sinus infections can be cured by making a tea from green tea leaf stems and pouring it directly into your nose, like so.
Pam ultimately makes the right move, though, by choosing to exchange her fancy new iPod for Jim's thoughtful, if humble, gift instead. But that isn't the only time that the gift appears in the show. Almost 2 years later, in the Season 4 episode, Branch Wars, Pam meets with the exquisitely refined Finer Things Club. As the club enjoys their fancy lunch, the very same teapot Pam got from her soon-to-be beau shows up on the table. He is hoping it had been washed thoroughly, hopefully several times since Dwight shoved it up his nose. While the show focuses pretty tightly on a small handful of characters, the rest of Dunder Mifflin's employees usually have their own lives going on in the background, complete with their own long-running plots. Take, for instance, Stanley's troubled marriage, which only gets worse as the series goes on. The issue even comes to a head in the Season 6 opener, Gossip, in which Michael leaks a secret of Stanley having an affair to the entire office. While that episode ends with Stanley getting a small measure of cathartic revenge, it turns out that the struggling salesman actually does want to improve his relationships. Sort of. In the Season 7 episode, Ultimatum, Pam encourages her co-workers to come up with New Year's resolutions. Some of these are minor items, like Pam attempting to drink less caffeine, but others get pretty ridiculous, like Creed trying to do the perfect cartwheel, or Dwight's search for, well, let's just call it romance.
My resolution is meet a loose woman.
The resolution that has to take the cake, though, is Stanley's double commitment to, quote, be a better husband and boyfriend. Each of those on their own is an admirable goal, but it might be pretty difficult to pull off both at the same time. As the last 2 seasons of The Office unfold, Dwight slowly but surely sees his life fall into place in virtually every way. He finds love, unwittingly has a son, gets his black belt, inherits a 1,600-acre beet farm, and finally, at long last, becomes the regional manager of the Scranton branch of Dunder Mifflin. It's not just the big stuff, though. Dwight's life is so perfect at this point that even his smallest, most obscure wishes start to come true. Case in point, the rocking chair. When Dwight accompanies Michael to a cocktail party at David Wallace's house way back in Season 3, he spends time admiring a wooden rocking chair in Wallace's son's bedroom and declares that he wants one for himself.
Oh, good, you're up. Hey, who makes this chair?
Cut to Season 9, more than half a decade later. In the episode The Farm, Dwight is interviewed as he sits in a gorgeous wooden rocking chair, which just so happens to look exactly like the one he was wishing for 6 seasons earlier. Michael Scott is proud of his possessions, and nowhere is this made more clear than in the Season 4 episode Dinner Party, in which Michael exhibits his pathetically small plasma screen television.
I will just stand here and watch television for hours. I love it. I love this TV.
Later in the episode, Jan throws one of Michael's many Dundie Awards at it, cracking the screen and infuriating Michael in the process. That isn't the last time we see Michael's beloved and broken miniature TV, though. The wall-mounted wonder made a cameo a year later, tucked behind another TV in the 5th season episode Dream Team. If that wasn't enough, it shows up yet again nearly 2 whole seasons later in the episode Garage Sale, sitting plain as day on Michael and Holly's table. It looks like the more grounded influence of Holly may have finally convinced Michael to let go of his prized entertainment possession once and for all. As an interesting little side note, the Garage Sale also shows the creepy clown painting first seen when Jim buys Pam a house in Season 5. Hopefully, whoever bought it was able to keep it out of the hands of the notorious Scranton art thieves.
I tried to move it, but he is really nailed in there. Worried about art theft, I guess. A lot of art thieves in this neighborhood.
In the Season 2 episode The Injury, Michael Scott wakes up and steps on his George Foreman grill, cooking his foot in the process. While the injury is minor, he ends up milking it all day long. When asked why he had a George Foreman grill by his bedside in the first place, he explains that every night before he goes to sleep, he lays out 6 pieces of bacon on a grill in his bedroom. When he wakes up, he pops on the grill, goes back to sleep, and then wakes up a second time to the delicious smell of sizzling bacon.
It is delicious, it's good for me, it's a perfect way to start the day.
It appears that Michael's morning bacon habits die hard. The grill shows up yet again 2 seasons later in the Season 4 episode Dinner Party, as Michael and Jan give Jim and Pam a rather uncomfortable tour of their bedroom. For all of her quirky, erratic behavior, Jan's apparently okay with the smell of bacon each morning, after it's been sitting out all night. A good portion of Season 3 follows Jim as he tries to get away from his crush on Pam and attempts to begin a new life at the Dunder Mifflin branch in Stamford. One episode, The Coop, follows the Stamford squad as they practice team-building exercises by playing Call of Duty against each other. The group is highly skilled at playing the video game at this point, but the Scranton newcomer spectacularly fails to get on the bandwagon.
Saboteur! Saboteur! I'm gonna kill you for real.
In order to give her new co-worker a hand, Karen shows Jim how to navigate out of a corner, only to shoot him a moment later. That's when we get to see her screen name for these inter-office death matches, Karen the Gym Slayer. Pretty specific, but also pretty appropriate. Michael Scott has been known to bend the truth from time to time, and that's to be expected from a guy who was Dunder Mifflin's top salesman for 2 years running back in the day. When it comes to his management skills though, the man seems a bit more insecure, and determined to prove a point. There's the famous World's Best Boss mug that he bought himself, one of the first things we see in the show's pilot. But that's not Michael's only dubious claim to fame. A plaque holding a certification can frequently be seen on the wall of his office. Sharp-eyed viewers may note that it's not a diploma, it's a certificate of authority for his watch. Even better, judging by the slightly misspelled brand name, it identifies Michael as the proud owner of a knockoff. While the writing on the certificate can be difficult to make out, there's one episode where it's clearly visible, and it makes for an often overlooked second layer to a gag. You can see it in the season 4 finale Goodbye Toby, which also happens to be the same episode in which Michael is forced to give his watch to Toby as a goodbye present after being an awful boss for so many years.
I am going to give Toby
your watch.
If that's not poetic justice, we don't know what is. There's a good portion of the series devoted to the ongoing duel between assistant regional managers. In one corner of the ring, we have the obvious candidate, Dwight Schrute.
That's where you have an assistant regional manager.
Yes, it is. Assistant to the regional manager.
Same thing.
No, it's not. It's lower, so
it's close.
His endless pursuit to escape being the assistant to the regional manager doesn't quite end until he leapfrogs the entire issue by being made the full-blown manager in season 9, at which time he appoints himself as his own assistant to the regional manager. In the other corner, we have Jim Halpert. While he does spend some time as co-manager in season 6, Jim actually climbs a corporate ladder to the assistant regional manager position much faster than that. In the season 3 episode, The Wally, Jim, Karen, and Andy have to work late and end up drinking a bit too much while they're at it. At one point, the camera shows Jim passed out on his desk with his nameplate card in front of him. It reads Jim Halpert, Assistant Regional Manager. Not a single toother in sight. Seems we have a winner. Most of the time, Creed is the one in the office who isn't quite what he seems.
I run a small fake ID company for my car with a laminated machine that I swipe from the sheriff's station.
However, in one episode, it's none other than Jim Halpert who seems to have a secret identity. As all truly devoted fans will recall, Season 4 kicks off with Meredith Palmer being struck by Michael Scott's car. It's a banner incident in the show that kicks off a running joke and even makes it into the montage of incidents referenced in the Seasons of Love parody that the crew sings to Michael at his very last Dundee ceremony, right before he exits the show in Season 7. When Meredith returns to work after the accident in the Season 4 episode Launch Party, she asks Jim to sign her cast. He agrees before realizing that Meredith's injured pelvis has presented him with a pretty unusual place to sign a cast. Needless to say, it's a little uncomfortable, even without Meredith's awkward flirting. So uncomfortable, in fact, that it might just have broken Jim's character. As he awkwardly signs his name, fans might notice it looks an awful lot like it says John Krasinski rather than Jim Halpert. He even dots 2 I's when he's finished. His character's name only has 1. The Schrute family is well known for its sense of tradition, longevity, and attention to detail. While this can be seen in everything from the venerable Schrute Farms family home to Dwight's impeccable work performance, there's one thing that sums it all up perfectly: the American flag. Not just any American flag, though. We're talking about the one flying from the porch of Schrute Farms. When some of the group visits Dwight on his family farm in the episode Doomsday in Season 8, they pass a flag on their way out. If you look closely, it's missing some stars, 35 to be precise. The 15-star flag was used between 1795 and 1818, which also happens to be the period during which Schrute Farms was founded. The accuracy isn't just fun to spot, it's also appropriately located on the home of the most likely person in the entire office who would care about a detail like that in the first place. The Season 5 episode The Surplus follows the office as they struggle to decide how to spend the budgetary surplus before it reverts back to corporate. The decision splits the group into 2 factions, one in favor of getting new chairs, the other for getting a new copier. Critically, Pam and Jim find themselves on opposite sides of the discussion, making this one of the few times that the newly engaged couple are pitted against one another. At one point, Oscar and Jim take Michael out to lunch in order to schmooze him about the benefits of getting a new copier. When they return, Jim brings Pam some tiramisu from the restaurant. Pam jokingly takes the gift with a smile, only to then throw it into the garbage can in defiance. Clearly, Pam will not be bought off with fancy cake. The back and forth is comical, but it turns out that the delicious dessert hasn't hit the end of the line quite yet. A bit later in the episode, Michael is seen eating tiramisu as he talks to David Wallace on the phone. Then, to bring it all home, during a big speech designed to cover the fact that he's shooting for a bonus by returning the surplus to corporate, Michael reveals where he got his snack from as he berates the office for being spoiled.
We are spoiled because we throw out perfectly good tiramisu because it has a little tiny hair on it.
The most surprising thing? That's not even the weirdest food choice Michael makes in this one episode. Every show has its list of slip-ups and continuity mistakes. The Office, for instance, will occasionally show an exterior shot with a suspiciously Californian palm tree on what's supposed to be a chilly morning in Scranton, Pennsylvania, something that's especially noticeable in Season 3's Traveling Salesman. There are a few others that slipped through the cracks though, and you can spot one in Season 8's Pool Party. In the episode, the staff heads over to Robert California's house after hours in order to throw one last party before he sells the home off to the highest bidder. While most of the crew spends time taking advantage of their boss's luxurious indoor pool, another group is taken on a long, boozy tour of the mansion, led by Mr. California himself. As they go along, observing each room and sucking up to California as he endlessly monologues, each member of the tour is gifted with their own bottle of wine, recklessly taken from the soon-to-be-sold wine cellar. At one point, as they observe a king-size bear rug made from two bears sewn together, Oscar takes a swig from his bottle, only to reveal a note on the bottom that reads Oscar that wasn't there earlier. Either the accountant is extremely particular about labeling his things, or somebody forgot to remove the prop label before the camera started rolling. The Office is known for having some of the best cold opens in sitcom history. Michael and Dwight's attempt at making a parkour video, Michael's truly incredible, wildly gif-worthy reaction to Toby's return, Randall Park's appearance as Asian Jim for one of the most elaborate entries in Jim and Dwight's ongoing prank war. They're all classics, but one of the best cold opens for the show takes place in the Season 3 episode Product Recall. In it, Jim arrives to work decked out in an outfit that makes him look just like Dwight. From the dorky haircut to the glasses, short-sleeve shirt, and beeper, the entire ensemble is on point.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
After his initial arrival, Jim explains that he got the outfit on the cheap, spending just $4 on the glasses and pulling the rest of the pieces together for a mere $7 extra. According to the total that he adds up on his Dwight-esque calculator watch, the grand total for the prank was a very affordable sum of $11. It's a memorable joke, and one of the highlights of the series. But what really puts it over the top is a subtle moment that we're treated to at the end of the episode. Angela, frustrated by a day of filling in on customer service calls, rips into Kevin for failing to add up the numbers on a payroll form correctly. The numbers in question? The same ones added up on the calculator watch back in the cold open. 4 plus 7. That's a little too specific to be a coincidence. So we're left with one amazing fact. Not only did Jim pull off an A+ prank, but he also managed to get reimbursed for it as a business expense. Hey, if Michael can spend company money hand over fist for all those big dinners at the local Chili's, then Jim should be able to expense costs incurred while boosting office morale. The only question left is whether Dwight thought to file those same forms when he dressed up as Jim.
It's been 20 years since Seinfeld left TV, and its ratings-grabbing final episode remains divisive among both critics and fans. Here's what happened during the last episode of this long-running sitcom, and how it fits into the rest of the hug-free, learning-free, laugh-filled show about nothing.
So everybody I know is a character on the show.
Right.
And it's about nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Breaking the mold. While sitcoms existed before Seinfeld, no other show captured the quirks of everyday life quite like it. Older sitcoms relied on likable characters and goofy hijinks, but Seinfeld, in contrast, famously had the unofficial motto of no hugging, no learning. In one of many tongue-in-cheek plots, we even watched characters pitch a Seinfeld-esque show to an NBC executive as a show about nothing.
I think I can sum up the show for you with one word. Nothing. Nothing? Nothing.
The show's tendency to make episodes out of anything meant that viewers had no idea what the show would focus on week to week. Viewers could jump in anywhere without getting lost, and the characters of Seinfeld would never learn a lesson, even if they really should. That all changed in the series finale. Looking up. The series finale starts off on a positive note. Jerry and George seem to have finalized their deal for the Seinfeld-esque show they're making called Jerry.
He wants to sit down with us and talk about Jerry.
Our show? Jerry?
Right.
Jerry? Oh my God, he wants to talk about Jerry?
Yeah.
Network executives even loaned the cast a private jet, so Jerry and his pals decide to go to Paris. It's about the happiest ending the self-obsessed crew could get, so of course it doesn't last. Almost immediately, they muck things up by nearly crashing the plane and get stuck in a small Massachusetts town while they wait for it to get fixed. In classic Seinfeld fashion, they witness a crime and crack jokes instead of helping the victim.
That's a shame. Alright, I'm gonna call NBC.
However, the characters aren't in New York, and their big city attitude lands them in court for failing to help. They finally experience real consequences for their daily rudeness almost as soon as they leave New York. Karma for past deeds. Of course, it's ridiculous that they're arrested for failing to help a carjacking victim, especially when, as their lawyer reminds the judge, the actual criminal is still out there.
So how can a bystander be guilty? No such thing. Have you ever heard of a guilty bystander?
Still, you can't say that Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer didn't have it coming in some way.
So they just stood there and did nothing?
Yeah, nothing. Nothing.
The actual crime they get arrested for might be criminal indifference, but the real reason that they get arrested is that they've amassed so much negative karma over the years that something needed to break. Even their acts of kindness are tainted with selfishness, like when George tries to take back a tip when the cashier doesn't notice him originally tipping. Character witnesses. During their trial, a series of character witnesses become a greatest hits parade of some of the funniest Seinfeld episodes, while also reminding viewers just how many awful things the cast has done.
But the idiot clowns did not know how to order. I banned that one, the woman, for a year. Then one day, she came back.
Instead of taking the opportunity to realize how many people they've hurt, Jerry, Elaine, George, and Kramer seem largely unmoved. And then they're judged.
We find the defendants guilty.
And sentenced to a year in prison. Nothing ever ends.
Oh, yeah. The second button is the key button. It literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land.
After they get convicted, Jerry talks to George about his shirt button placement in an exact rehash of the very first lines of Seinfeld.
See, now to me, that button's in the worst possible spot. The second button literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land.
George responds by asking if they've had the conversation before, and having completely ignored any chance to redeem themselves, the show ends exactly where it begins, with George and Jerry having a conversation about nothing. Controversial conclusion. Love it or hate it, the ending is certainly bold. Unfortunately, it was also pretty divisive. Entertainment Weekly gave it a C- at the time, while USA Today published a scathing review of the finale. On the other hand, Grantland published a defense of the finale in 2015. It wasn't just critics who were torn either. The actors were divided about the unique ending. Jerry Seinfeld himself initially defended the show in a Reddit AMA, saying, "I was happy with the Seinfeld finale because we didn't want to do another episode as much as we wanted to have everybody come back to the show we had so much fun with." Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who played Elaine, even made a joke about the finale on The Late Show with David Letterman.
Thanks for letting me take part in another hugely disappointing series finale.
Not the real ending? While the actual finale of Seinfeld might still be debated, it's not necessarily the final word from co-creator Larry David. On Curb Your Enthusiasm, David put together a Seinfeld finale more in keeping with fans' expectations, when he brings the cast back together in a ploy to regain the affections of his ex-wife.
Larry, we already screwed up one finale. We can't do another.
We didn't screw up a finale. That was a good finale.
In the reunion, Jerry has gotten together with Elaine, while George tries to get back together with his ex-wife Amanda after losing all of his money in a pyramid scheme. Jerry and Elaine have even had a daughter together. The ending is much closer to what fans likely pictured when Seinfeld was wrapping up its run, and David even called the faux reunion, quote, "a perfect way to do something like that, but not to do it."
Few people in the entertainment industry of the 90s had more power than Tim Allen. In addition to a thriving career in stand-up comedy and roles in movies like The Santa Claus, Galaxy Quest, and Toy Story, he starred on ABC's Home Improvement, one of the most-watched TV shows of the decade. Based on a major element of his comedy act, that men were still essentially ill-equipped cavemen and had evolved only enough to enjoy power tools, Allen played Tim the Toolman Taylor. Tim was a bumbling husband and father, and host of Tool Time, a Michigan-based home improvement show which invariably ended up with him breaking something. Here's a look behind the scenes of ABC's 8-season smash. A Tale of Two Jills. Patricia Richardson wasn't the first actress to play the role of Tim Taylor's long-suffering wife, Jill.
Who's that supposed to be? Is that supposed to be me?
No, that's not you.
Actress Frances Fisher originally landed the role and performed it for the pilot taping. While the inaugural episode was successful enough to get the show on ABC's schedule, test audiences didn't like Fisher in the role. So with little time to spare before production started, the showrunners replaced Fisher with Richardson, even though it wasn't ideal timing.
I had just given birth to 2 babies, and I really was supposed to do another show for ABC, and that was supposed to happen 9 months later, so I was going to have all this time to lose the weight and go be with my babies.
The other show was cancelled though, so they offered her double salary to play as Jill. Richardson warned producers that there might be a set delay as a result of a new motherhood.
I said, look, I'm nursing twins. You have to wait for me for 40 minutes while I'm doing that. And they said, oh, well, yeah, we'll do anything.
And so the new mom started raising her on-screen kids alongside her real-life babies. You can almost call him Al. You probably know character actor Stephen Tobolowsky from just about everything, from Groundhog Day to Silicon Valley to the Goldbergs. But the actor could have had a long-lasting regular gig on Home Improvement if he wanted it. Tobolowsky originally won the role of Al Borland, Tim Taylor's long-suffering, extra-competent tool-time assistant. He walked away, however, when they couldn't assure him of a proper start date and still wanted an exclusive contract. Tobolowsky told Splitsider, "I couldn't do any other work, any other shows, which is normal on a regular show, but my wife was pregnant, we had a baby coming. I had auditioned for a couple of movies and was waiting on them, and they said I couldn't do movies." Rather than risk being broke for months, Tobolowsky parted ways with Home Improvement, and the part of being the butt of every joke went to Richard Kahn instead.
Woo! Look at that butt crack you got going there.
Ashley Judd needs no improvement. Pamela Anderson's high-profile career really started when she played Lisa, the Tool Girl, on Tool Time, the show within a show on Home Improvement. But award-winning star and activist Ashley Judd also tried out for the part. When she auditioned for the show, creator Matt Williams thought she was so talented, even too talented for the somewhat thankless eye-candy role of Lisa. Williams called Judd's agent and said that while she didn't get the part, he was going to create a role just for her as Tim Taylor's sister. But that offer was declined, and she went on to star in NBC's drama Sisters instead. Chappelle's first show. Home Improvement might not seem like the kind of vehicle to propel the career of one of the most incendiary comedians of all time, but it did. On a 1995 episode of Home Improvement, Tim Taylor's tool time descended, as it often did, into a discussion about how marriage can be tough. Tim asked if anyone in the studio audience had, like him, been tricked into a fight with their significant other. 2 guys named Dave and Jim could relate, and Tim pulled them up on stage.
Well, what were you thinking?
I was thinking of calling you.
No, you weren't.
Yes, I was.
No, you weren't.
As Dave, Chappelle lit up the screen, impressing ABC executives so much that they commissioned a show about the duo called Buddies. It debuted in 1996 with some changes, including the replacement of Jim Breuer with Christopher Garten. Only a few episodes aired before Buddies was cancelled, but landing a primetime network TV show couldn't have hurt Chappelle's early exposure efforts. Emmy Snafu. Most TV fans probably don't know that performers have to submit their own names for consideration for the Emmy Awards, and apparently neither did Tim Allen. Home Improvement was the actor's first major small-screen role, and he didn't know how the Emmys worked at first. When Emmy nominations were released in the summer of 1992 after Home Improvement's first season, Allen wasn't snubbed for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series, he just hadn't submitted his paperwork. After somebody told him the rules, Allen made sure to get his name onto the ballot the next year. He was eventually nominated that year but lost out to Ted Danson from Cheers. But Allen just couldn't win. His team forgot to submit his name for consideration the following year, much to his disappointment.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Not a word you want to hear in this house.
Tool Time meets Game Time. Sitcoms aren't easy to turn into video games, but Home Improvement was so popular during its run that a game called Power Tool Pursuit debuted in 1994 for the Super Nintendo. The plot of the game is that a new line of power tools by Tool Time sponsor Binford Tools had been stolen right before Tim Taylor is supposed to unveil them on the air. Tim goes on a quest in search of the tools, using other power tools to defeat enemies like dinosaurs, mummies, ghosts, and other creatures which definitely weren't a part of the average Home Improvement episode. In keeping with the show, which often touted the dumb, macho, off-the-cuff ways that real men should act, the game's manual consisted entirely of the message, "Real men don't need instructions."
Now there's raw power!
With a JTT, Home Improvement played to a lot of different demographics. Adult fans loved Tim Allen's destructive antics, while many tween girls tuned in for Jonathan Taylor Thomas. Of the three young actors playing the Taylor kids, JTT is the one who became the major teen idol. His face appeared on the cover of all the major magazines and poster foldouts, and he was the stuff young crushes were made of. Despite the overnight fame he earned from the show though, Thomas left the show in 1998. He told People magazine, "I've been going non-stop since I was 8 years old. I wanted to go to school, to travel, and have a bit of a break." He enrolled at Harvard, studying philosophy and history, but he also acted in a couple of movies. That didn't sit well with Alan, who was confused as to why the young star had left. Alan told TV Guide, he said it was about going to school, but then he did some films. Did he want to do films? Did he want to go to school? After Alan confronted Thomas on set, their feud became so bad that the young actor opted not to return for the series finale. Thomas and Alan must have patched things up at some point since then, however, because Thomas guested on 4 episodes of Alan's sitcom Last Man Standing, and his appearances even included some cheeky references to their history.
You know, a lot of times that middle child ends up being the funny one because he wants the attention. Man, you look familiar.
The season that never was. Home Improvement wrapped up after 8 successful seasons in 1999, and it was a decision made by the cast and crew, rather than ABC. While he grew sentimental and upset as the finale neared, Alan also regretted not ending the show a year earlier, when the show was still a top 5 ratings hit. In its final season, Home Improvement fell to 11th place in Nielsen ratings, but ABC wanted to go even longer. The network even reportedly offered Alan as much as $50 million and Patricia Richardson $25 million to return for one more season. Somehow though, Alan and Richardson managed to leave that money on the table, and the world's time with the Toolman was done.
The 1990s brought a tidal wave of sitcoms crashing onto television's shores. Some were amazing, some were terrible, but all of them in time came to an end. These are the strangest, most interesting, and most surprising stories of 90s sitcom cancellations, from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to Frasier. Freaks and Geeks transcended its sitcom status, ultimately becoming one of the defining teen shows of the 1990s. Unfortunately, much of its reputation is posthumous. It was canceled after 1 season and never given another chance by NBC.
High school is for learning, but it's also where you should be learning how to socialize.
The show debuted at 8 p.m. on a Saturday, an awful time for a new show, especially one aimed at teens. Freaks and Geeks then changed time slot, hampering any chance at building ratings. The producers created a website, a rarity at the time for TV shows, to help fans keep track of when it was on. But NBC refused to put the URL on any commercials lest viewers gravitate towards the web instead of TV. There were also tensions between the producers and the network. NBC wanted a more positive show, while the producers wanted to keep things realistic. Executive producer Judd Apatow became particularly known for viciously defending his show to any and all network executives. In the end, the show was canceled, but its legend has only grown. Phenom, a sitcom about a tennis prodigy and her family, lasted 1 season and has largely been forgotten. The show had a lot going for it at the start, and perhaps more importantly, it had a great time slot right after the mega hit Full House. So why was it canceled? Depends on whether you ask ABC or the producers. ABC implied it was canceled because it underperformed. Reviews indicated a lack of direction for the show, but this was still a shock to fans. Phenom creator and executive producer Dick Blasucci was also surprised the show was axed. He claimed that even though their own metrics showed good ratings, ABC told them that their numbers didn't match. Many saw this as code for a network looking for an excuse to cut a show. Third Rock from the Sun followed a group of aliens masquerading as an upper-middle-class American family, studying human habits and reporting back. It was, if you'll excuse the space pun, a far-out show that dabbled in everything from witty wordplay to slapstick. It had a great cast, including John Lithgow and Kristen Johnson, and introduced the world to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The show was off-kilter enough to have dedicated fans, but it had a hard time maintaining casual viewership thanks to a frequently changing time slot. The network didn't believe in Third Rock in spite of its longevity. As such, the finale of Season 6 was designed as a series finale, and the creative team signed on for different projects, correctly suspecting the show was done. The cast ultimately accused the network of having mishandled the series. Will Smith's career trajectory from rapper to living with his auntie and uncle in Bel-Air to the world's biggest movie star is a strange arc. Starting as the Fresh Prince with DJ Jazzy Jeff in the 1980s, Smith got rich from his music, only to blow all his money on an unsustainable lifestyle. After getting in trouble with the IRS, he signed on to star in a sitcom largely because he needed the money. Luckily for him, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air went on to become one of the most memorable sitcoms of the 90s. Running the gamut on topics from normal teen issues to somber dives into racial discrimination, it was such a hit that it never left its 8 p.m. Monday time slot during its entire run. By the end of the series, Smith had become a megastar. In addition to the leading role on Fresh Prince, he also had 6 Degrees of Separation and Bad Boys under his belt, and he was set to star in a movie you may have heard of called Independence Day. Smith loved his castmates, but recognized the show was limiting and knew it was time to move on. He had something bigger in mind.
Goodbye, Will. Bye-bye, G.
The Fresh Prince was canceled largely because Smith was ready to move on to the big screen full-time. Few sitcoms come longer running and better loved than Frasier. Starring Kelsey Grammer as radio psychologist Frasier Crane, the show went through almost the entirety of the 90s and beyond. Originally a spin-off of Cheers, Frasier stuck around a season longer than its predecessor. But why would such a long-running and successful sitcom get canceled? Part of it was a ratings dip, yes, but the larger part was unsustainable production costs. Long-running shows often see higher production costs, given that actor salaries tend to rise and more care is put into the show itself. By the end of the final season, each episode of Frasier cost over $5 million to make, $1.6 million of which was Grammer's salary. He implied he'd be interested in a 12th season and might take a pay cut, but an NBC spokesperson said the network just couldn't see the numbers working. So the show's writers decided to end things on a high note.
Thank you, Frasier, for, well, you know.
Strangers with Candy was one of the most bizarre and acclaimed comedy shows of the late 90s. Starring Amy Sedaris as Jerry Blank and featuring comedy icons Stephen Colbert and Paul Dinello, the show was a hit on Comedy Central. It ran for 30 episodes over 3 seasons in 1999 and 2000. Its weird, twisted morals alone make for some of the best comedy of its era, even though it's mostly a cult hit. As such, Strangers with Candy often makes lists of shows that were canceled too soon. Here's the catch, though. According to Sedaris, the show was technically never canceled. In that era, most Comedy Central shows only lasted 3 seasons, and the Strangers with Candy team operated under the assumption that they'd be no different. Sedaris later noted that the final episode of the series was simply written assuming it would be the last, and it just worked out that way. Martin was one of the highest-rated sitcoms during Fox's rise in the early 90s. By the end of the show's run, it was still the 3rd most-watched show among black viewers. It was a hit however you slice it, and still does well in syndication. When it ended somewhat abruptly after 5 seasons, star Martin Lawrence said it was because he felt it was just time to move on. This sounded plausible enough at the time thanks to Lawrence's budding movie stardom. Of course, even in the pre-Twitter days, Lawrence was enough of a public presence that most people suspected differently. His erratic behavior was making headlines even before co-star Tisha Campbell filed a sexual harassment lawsuit against him after she quit the show. The lawsuit was settled and Campbell only appeared in the series finale on the condition that she didn't have to be on set with Lawrence. Lawrence told GQ magazine in January 2020 that he regretted a lot of his behavior in the 90s. He also openly acknowledged for the first time that he walked away from Martin because of the lawsuit. Martin and Campbell are reportedly on good terms as of late, so there's at least a happy ending.
As the latest addition to NBC's ever-expanding library of sitcoms, Young Rock has already taken the television world by storm. In case you haven't seen it, the story of Young Rock goes like this. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is running for president, but wants to better connect with the people in hopes of securing their vote. To do so, he joins WandaVision's own Randall Park to shed some light on the man behind the myth, telling crazy stories from his childhood, sharing life lessons that got him through hard times, and showing there's more to him than meets the eye.
Oh, and I've got some pretty cool stories about Andre the Giant.
With 1 episode released so far, there's no denying the former Scorpion King actor went through quite an unorthodox upbringing. The Rock's developmental years proved rather unconventional. His father, the late soul man Rocky Johnson, made ends meet by working as a professional wrestler and, as a consequence, kept his family on the road most of the year. As a byproduct of that lifestyle, the young Dwayne Johnson, aka Dewey, spent a lot of time around his dad's coworkers, including the likes of the Iron Sheik, Junkyard Dog, and the 8th wonder of the world himself, Andre the Giant.
You know, when you grow up around wrestlers, sometimes you learn lessons in very interesting ways.
Casting such a larger-than-life character for young Rock surely wasn't easy, but Matthew Willig ultimately landed the role. Here's where else you might recognize the massive actor from. Born and raised in La Mirada, California, Matthew Willig grew up playing sports, particularly basketball and football. He carried this interest into his college years, where he played football at the University of Southern California, playing a role on the winning team of the 1989 Rose Bowl. This success didn't go unnoticed, inevitably leading to Willig joining the National Football League in 1993 as an offensive tackle for the New York Jets. He played with the Jets until 1995, when he was scooped by the Atlanta Falcons, who kept him around for 2 seasons. Afterwards, he signed with the Green Bay Packers in 1998, followed by the St. Louis Rams in 1999. He didn't actually see any playing time that season, but his team did get the victory at Super Bowl 34, earning himself a Super Bowl ring. As the 2000s began, Willig found himself on the roster of the San Francisco 49ers. He stayed with the team until 2002 when he jumped to the Carolina Panthers, the team that sent him back to the Super Bowl for the 38th big game. He wrapped up his NFL career after the 2005 season once again as a member of the St. Louis Rams. It's an epic career in a position that boasts an average lifespan of about 3.5 years in the pros, but even after retirement, Willig was just getting started. On the football field, being a 6-foot, 8-inch mountain of a man certainly has its benefits. When it comes to the bright lights of Hollywood, however, it also provides a kind of niche. Willig's big screen tenure kicked off in 1993 in action movie Full Contact, playing the aptly named character of Hulk. Years later, after his NFL career had run its course, Willig popped up in the 2006 sports comedy The Benchwarmers as an unnamed jock, establishing a trend of taking minor roles that play to his unique frame. Willig put this asset to use for comedy's sake in 2009 for the prehistoric Jack Black and Michael Cera project Year One, portraying the burly Marlack, a proficient hunter who's more than capable of manhandling Jack Black's character. His next most high-profile gig arrived in 2013, once again working in the comedic realm for We're the Millers, acting as a menacing drug dealer alongside Jason Sudeikis and Jennifer Aniston. In 2015, he tried his hand at more dramatic fare, appearing as deceased football star Justin Strelzik in the biographical sports drama Concussion. 3 years later, he teamed up with the Coen brothers for a small part in The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, striking an intimidating posture in a role credited as Cantina Scum. His most recent cinematic works include a role in heavy metal icon Rob Zombie's 2019 horror film 3 from Hell, followed by a small part in 2020's Birds of Prey. Of course, these examples are only a small portion of his entire filmography, which also includes lesser-known releases like short films and direct-to-video movies. Even in those smaller projects, he obviously has a tendency to stand out. 2006 marked the beginning of his television work. That year, he made one-off appearances on Malcolm in the Middle, The West Wing, and Everybody Hates Chris. The next year, he appeared in 2 episodes of Dexter, and he also made appearances on NCIS and The Young and the Restless. With the 2010s in full swing, Willig's TV workflow held strong, bringing him parts in shows such as Grimm, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., on which he played the role of the Inhuman Lash for 6 installments of the show's 3rd season. Aside from his role on Young Rock, his more recent credits include 2 episodes of Flaked and 3 of Blunt Talk, as well as a cameo on The Guest Book in 2018 and Charmed in 2019. The guy's clearly got the frame for genre. For now, Willig is expected to continue appearing in the 1st season of Young Rock. Considering his lengthy resume and his unique physicality, it's hard to imagine he'll be dropping off the radar anytime soon.
At its core, American Dad is a family sitcom, crossed with the craziest elements of spy movies and science fiction. More than 200 episodes of the series have aired, centered around CIA agent Stan Smith, his family, their live-in alien Roger, and a talking fish named Klaus. Here's a look behind the scenes of American Dad. The evolution of Klaus. American Dad is almost definitely the only show on TV to have a goldfish who speaks with a German accent. That's Klaus, a once human German ski jumper whose brain was switched with a goldfish by cutting-edge CIA technology, and who now lives in a bowl at the Smith residence.
Hour 36. The sun seems like it comes every day now. The cat's back!
Not only was Klaus once human, he was also once French. Series co-creator Seth MacFarlane explained.
Dee Baker, it was interesting, the character of Klaus was originally supposed to be French. I remember that Dee had come in to do some animal sounds on Family Guy and had kind of warmed himself up in the booth by doing this German accent.
MacFarlane fell in love with Baker's alternate take on the fish, and Baker got the part, beating out Billy West and John DiMaggio of Futurama. They dropped the politics. A show about a very conservative CIA agent who lives and works in the Washington, D.C. area is bound to be at least a little political, but the American Dad writers have toned down that kind of content over the years. It's not because the show's networks, Fox or TBS, told them to, or that they were afraid of offending viewers. They found that political references dated the show. For example, in 2005, President George W. Bush nominated White House counsel Harriet Miers for the Supreme Court. American Dad wrote in a joke about her, but Bush withdrew the nomination. A few months later, the episode with the Myers joke aired. Co-creator Mike Barker told the AV Club, "I remember watching on air and having to Google who our own joke was because it had been so long since the joke was pitched. In the end, American Dad moved away from politics to remain more relevant in reruns." Going too far. American Dad can push the envelope in terms of content, but there have been only a few times cast or crew drew a line. Patrick Stewart, who plays CIA Director Avery Bullock, didn't want to deliver a joke that strongly suggested his character was a pedophile, according to a 2012 San Diego Comic-Con panel, even though Stewart had no qualms earlier about singing a suggestive Oingo Boingo song.
I love little girls, they make me feel so good. I love little girls, they make me feel so bad.
Another instance of self-editing personally involved co-creator Seth MacFarlane. There was a reference in a script to a character having lost a lot of weight, or as the original script called it, doing a reverse Jason Segel. MacFarlane, who's friends with Segel, asked for a rewrite. Writers gave Steve's voice actor, Scott Grimes, the option to say Russell Crowe, which then made Grimes uncomfortable. They ultimately decided on Vince Vaughn, but still recorded him saying Russell Crowe in case it was funnier. Pulled from the schedule. It's not just a few lines that have had to be cut from the script. At least twice, episodes were significantly delayed, so they wouldn't seem to make light of national tragedies. In April 2011, Fox planned a night of crossover episodes where a hurricane would impact the lives of characters on all three of Seth MacFarlane's animated shows, American Dad, Family Guy, and The Cleveland Show. In the weeks leading up to that event, storms and tornadoes ravaged the southeastern United States, and Fox pulled the hurricane-themed episodes, pushing Night of the Hurricane to October 2011. The following year, the American Dad episode Minstrel Krampus was scheduled to air on December 16th. The Christmas-themed episode included an extremely violent scene in which Santa and Stan Smith storm the castle where the mythical creature Krampus lives, violently killing Beauty and the Beast-styled animated objects. Just before it aired, Fox removed Minstrel Krampus from its schedule in light of that week's tragic school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. The episode ultimately aired a year later. The musical cast. American Dad employs some top-notch vocal talent, and some of its cast members have such skilled and varied vocal abilities that they've released albums. In 2012, Rachel McFarlane, who voices Haley Smith, released an album called Haley Sings, a collection of sultry nightclub jazz. The American Dad episode Love AD Style, in which Haley becomes a nightclub singer, features a couple of songs from the album. Scott Grimes, whose vocal talents are also often used in the show, has released 3 albums: a self-titled pop record in 1990, Livin' on the Run in 2005, and Drive in 2010. And singing traditional pop standards with a big band is just one of Seth MacFarlane's many jobs. He's made 3 albums of the stuff: Music is Better Than Words, Holiday for Swing, and No One Ever Tells You, which actually hit #1 on Billboard's Jazz Albums chart. Have a great night.
Bye, have a beautiful time.
Underdog Productions' end card for every episode of American Dad uses a video of a smiling man giving a wave and a thumbs up, usually wishing everyone a good night.
Bye, have a great time.
According to the show's DVD commentaries, he's a guy identified only as Security Officer Pena, who worked at the building where Underdog Productions makes the show. Pena no longer works there, but his presence remains a fixture at the end of each episode, even when he's not there.
Come back, you cowards! I'll kill you! I'll hunt you down and kill you! Bye, have a beautiful time.
Overdoses, relapses, and rehab doesn't sound like a recipe for a successful comedy, but Chuck Lorre pulled it off for 8 seasons with his smash hit, Mom. If you've ever dreamed of making it in showbiz and need a bit of inspiration, check out Chuck Lorre's story. Lorre, the creator of Mom, along with a host of other hit sitcoms, spent many years broke and struggling before finally breaking through in his mid-30s. As he told the Lansing State Journal, "I I remember vividly what it's like to put 38 cents in the gas tank and drive to my second cousin's house so they would feed me. Before hitting it big in television, however, Laurie spent some time dabbling in another creative profession, songwriting. And if you're wondering whether any of his songs became well known, we've got 4 words for you. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes, if you've ever gotten the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles theme song stuck in your head, you can thank Laurie, who co-wrote the catchy song that helped define the franchise. As for his comedy writing dream, that didn't really happen until he got a job writing for the groundbreaking sitcom Roseanne, a major break that opened doors, launching him on a career trajectory like no other. After Roseanne, Laurie went on to become one of the most successful sitcom creators in history, responsible for the hits Grace Under Fire, Sybil, and Dharma and Greg. But Laurie really hit the jackpot with 2.5 Men and The Big Bang Theory, the pair of mega hits which gave him the Hollywood cred to make Mom happen. And even though Laurie is a rarity, a sitcom Svengali with multiple mega hits under his belt, any aspiring writer can find inspiration in his rags to riches tale. Before Mom, Anna Faris was best known for her roles in comedies like Just Friends, The House Bunny, and the Scary Movie franchise. With her distinctive comedic chops and bubbly blonde persona, she was the first actor CBS approached for Mom. Faris told Pop Sugar that her husband at the time, actor Chris Pratt, actually read the script for Mom before she did, and by the time he got to the second page, he was convinced the role was perfect for her, saying, "Honey, whatever you're doing, stop now and read this." Even though television has come a long way since the days where everything edgy was on HBO, Faris and Janney agreed that Mom dealt with risky issues for a network sitcom during a joint interview with Larry King. When King asked Faris if she was ever surprised by the content of the show, she revealed that she was constantly shocked by how far the writers were willing to push it, saying, "On a weekly basis when we get the new scripts, I always say, are we sure CBS is okay with this?" Before Mom, Allison Janney was best known for her role as White House Press Secretary Claudia Jean Craig, also known as CJ on The West Wing. Fans may be surprised to learn that she didn't have her breakthrough role on The West Wing until she was 40, which is pretty unusual by Hollywood standards. Janney did have a steady stream of supporting movie and TV roles before then, but nothing as big as The West Wing, which eventually led to Mom. On Mom, Allison Janney's character Bonnie had long, flowing auburn hair. Her coif actually became synonymous with the character, which was a bit ironic, considering that it's not even Janney's real hair. Yep, the actor was wearing a wig the whole time, and her co-workers didn't even know. Janney's real hair is actually a beautiful shade of natural silver, and when she showed up on set without the wig one day, the producers apparently freaked. During an appearance on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, Janney told the tale.
"How are we going to do what? You should have asked us before you did this to your hair." And I'm like, "Guys, I've been wearing a wig since season 1, but nobody knew it."
As a recovering addict himself, Mom was a very personal show for Chuck Lorre, who got sober himself at the age of 47. As he told TV Guide, "Sobriety is a big part of my life, and it's been that way for almost 13 years. I'm eternally grateful I've been able to find this in my life."
I am trying so hard. I quit drinking, I'm going to meetings.
As far as how his personal recovery journey relates to Mom, Lori told IndieWire, "Broken people trying to repair their lives, I can relate to that. I think we're all in the process of doing a little mending."
Excuse me, no one's going to be snorting any fat rails while I'm here.
And as Janney told IndieWire in another interview, "It feels like a very grown-up show for Chuck Lorre. I had no idea that we were going to be going to the places that we've gotten to go with Mom." In show business, like any other business, success breeds success, and in Chuck Lorre's case, having so many hits on his resume gave him the freedom to take on riskier stuff. In other words, shows like 2.5 Men gave him the freedom to make Mom. Lorre told IndieWire that to challenge himself creatively, he needed to tackle something different, something that would force him to step into new areas of comedy. "I am at a point in my career where I can take some chances. If you're going to experiment, do something that is meaningful to you. If you fail, you did something meaningful to you." And with Mom, he did just that.
Someone's spoiling themselves. Actually, it's for my mom. Aww. She's a drug addict who just got out of jail. Aww.
Back in the 1970s, legendary TV producer Norman Lear was a household name. He had many creations to his name, but none as groundbreaking as All in the Family, which dealt with topical issues and proved that TV sitcoms could be intelligent and thought-provoking. Chuck Lorre often credits Lear for inspiring him to create similarly edgy sitcoms, proving to the world that television doesn't have to be predictable, and it doesn't need to be insulting to the intelligence of the audience. In an interview with Variety, Lorre said that with Mom, he wanted to tell stories that could take place in what he calls a Norman Lear world. In other words, realism rather than fantasy.
You know the definition of insanity?
Yes, I know the definition of insanity. I live with you!
Lear, now 100 years old and someone Laurie considers a friend, brought a reality to the sitcom format that had never been seen before. And much like Laurie has done with Mom, Lear made history tackling tough subjects on TV as well. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, Lear noted, "People will tell you can't do just about anything. Mention abortion, have a gay character, write funny about cancer. You do it anyway."
Christy Plunkett, Jill's sponsor. But I'm not responsible for this.
It was a big surprise to the viewers of Mom that the character of Jodie, played by Emily Osment, had a fatal overdose and died on the show. At that point, Jodie had reached 6 months of sobriety. Laurie has said it was decided that Jodie would have an overdose when she was first introduced to the show. He explained the reasoning behind this in an interview with TV Insider. "Recovery from addiction is fragile. The one day at a time trope is sadly true. It's a vulnerable state of being that requires vigilance. You can't ignore it." The entire cast of Mom was heartbroken when they read the script and realized that Jodie was going to die on the show. Not only did they love the character, but they loved Osment as well. It was a challenge for the writers of Mom to figure out how to bring tragedy to the show and then go back to being a comedy, but ultimately Jodie's death showed that life goes on. Laughter is contagious, and the shared experience of laughing can make a comedy even funnier. This is why it was so hard to shoot Mom when the COVID-19 pandemic took away its live audience.
Something I said changed the course of your life for the better.
Yeah, feels like it.
Are you listening to this?
Veteran TV director James Widows, who helmed episodes of Mom, agreed with that assessment. Speaking to Variety, he called shooting the sitcom during the pandemic a logistical challenge like no other. Gemma Baker, the co-creator of Mom, told Deadline that not having a live audience was one of the hardest parts of finally ending the series. An audience was so much a part of what we did, and this whole season we missed them. It really was a huge loss to not have that energy and feedback and laughter. It would have been great if we could have ended the season in front of a live audience. When Anna Faris announced that she was leaving Mom after 7 seasons, it was a big shock, to say the least. And while it's hard for a show to survive when a lead character leaves, it isn't unheard of. Similar to Chuck Lorre's other hit sitcom, 2.5 Men, Mom was able to hang in there for a little while longer, putting out one more season. However, co-creator Gemma Baker wishes they could have done more with Christy, telling Deadline, "There were so many things that we wanted to address that we didn't get a chance to. If we had a little more time, we would have gotten a chance." One storyline fans missed out on was seeing how Christy would have done at Georgetown University Law School. Baker described how she imagined it. Christy would have faced some challenges, but ultimately would have overcome them. Baker went on to tell Deadline how she envisioned closure for Christy. "I like to think that Christy got into a happy and healthy relationship and that she is still a part of her mother's life." Fans can have a lot of power when it comes to saving a show. Case in point, the original Star Trek series. About to be canceled after the 2nd season, NBC's deluge of letters from fans begging the network to keep it on saved it. The cop drama Cagney and Lacey has a similar story. After it was canceled, a letter-writing campaign kept it on the air. And when Mom was officially canceled in February 2021, fans mobilized with a 50,000 signature petition. And those fans who were in recovery were particularly passionate. To them, it was important for the show to remain on the air because of the fact that so many addicts were struggling during the pandemic. As the petition stated, Mom has been a crucial voice in destigmatizing addiction. This show has no doubt saved countless lives by promoting substance abuse recovery and encouraging people to seek help. While the show did end up going off the air, the spirit of Mom and how it gave a voice to people in recovery will carry on. A lot of sitcoms have endings where everything ends up just fine and everyone lives happily ever after. But for a show like Mom, having everything wrapped up with a neat little bow at the end just wouldn't work.
My name is Bonnie, and I'm a grateful alcoholic.
Co-creator Gemma Baker also didn't want a convenient ending for the show, telling The Hollywood Reporter, "Because of the nature of the show, it didn't feel truthful to have an ending where everything is tied up because the show has always really been about reality and characters showing up for life on life's terms."
I think it's true what we say here. Don't leave before the miracle.
Baker recalled how the finale was hard to put together because they wanted to bring the show to a close in a way that was meaningful and that did the best for the characters and the audience as well. A challenging feat, even under the best of circumstances, made more difficult by the sudden departure of the lead.
We'll be there every step of the way. Damn straight.
But it could also be seen as fitting how, in the end, the characters and the creative staff had to make the best of a tough situation and deal with life on life's terms.
Forgiven.
The ending to this crafty little show is a bit controversial among fans. At least each character got their own individual send-off. Here are the most important How I Met Your Mother character endings, ranked from worst to best. As How I Met Your Mother's resident Lothario, Barney Stinson, who's always clad in a crisp suit and will stop at nothing to bed every woman in New York, seems like he'll never change his wild ways. However, as the show progresses, Barney, who seemed the least likely of anyone to settle down, realizes he's in love with Robin. To Ted's great shame, the feeling is, shockingly, mutual. After several seasons of tumultuous on-again, off-again relationships, the two finally tie the knot, and their wedding weekend becomes the sole focus of How I Met Your Mother's 9th and final season. In the series finale, Barney goes through a ton of difficult changes, and neither the character nor the audience is really given any time to process them. After 3 difficult years of marriage, he and Robin apparently get divorced. Robin returns to her career, and Barney returns to his old ways, until something completely unexpected happens. He gets a girl pregnant and becomes the father of a daughter.
You are the love of my life.
Suddenly, Barney becomes a judgmental whore, yelling at women in bars about what their fathers might think, and leaning into the overprotective dad vibe with the zeal of a convert. Barney turns out to be a layered, complex character, but his ending is oversimplified at best and flat out offensive at worst. After watching Ted spend nearly the entirety of How I Met Your Mother searching for the mother in the title, expectations were high, and ultimately, they were met in full by Kristen Miliotti's sweet, pitch-perfect portrayal of Tracy McConnell. She meets Ted as they argue over an umbrella they've both owned on a rainy train platform. Throughout the final season, we get small glimpses into Ted and Tracy's relationship. We also finally learn about Tracy, a process of viewer education that culminates in the standout 9th season episode, How Your Mother Met Me. After the show laid the groundwork of their relationship for the entire 9th season, fans were enraged when, during the series finale, Tracy dies of an unnamed illness, and Ted moves on. The entire series' framing device is revealed to be a guilty Ted telling his teenage children about their dead mother. Yikes! Thanks to the speed of the finale's overstuffed epilogue, Ted's entire life with Tracy and her untimely death happens in a matter of minutes, providing a pretty unfair ending to the show's eminently lovable title character. On the surface, it seems like Robin has one of the best endings in all of How I Met Your Mother. When you look closer, however, you can see the obvious flaws. After her divorce from Barney, Robin becomes a famous international journalist, constantly jet-setting around the world, but missing her friends. She finds it difficult to be around the old gang again after her ex-husband gets back to his womanizing ways. She continues her close relationship with Lily and eventually finds her way back into the fray. Not only does she go to Ted and Tracy's wedding, but she makes peace with Barney. By 2030, Robin is anchored in New York once again. In the final scene, Ted shows up at her door to win her back with the blessing of his talked-out teens. She finally gets everything she ever wanted, yes? Clumsily shoving Robin and Ted together at the end of the series, which indicates that Robin, a smart and strong woman, was pining for Ted this entire time, is just insulting to the amazing character the showrunners built along the way. No matter how tumultuous her life had been, the Robin that emerges from season 9 would not have settled for Ted. Throughout the show, 2 characters hold an incredible amount of importance, but almost never say a word. Ted's future children, Penny and Luke Mosby. For what feels like years, Penny and Luke sit patiently and listen to their father's wildly rambling story, which takes plenty of tangents and detours along the way, before he actually gets to the part about how he met their mother. Penny and Luke get to reveal the show's final twist, and help their dad move on with his life in the aftermath of their mother's death.
The point of the story is that
you totally have the hots for Aunt Robin.
Not only was that twist fairly unpopular, but it was the only time in the show the kids had an actual say in the story. Aside from Robin, one of Ted's girlfriends always loomed large over the series. Victoria, the impossibly adorable baker Ted meets at a wedding during the show's first season. Though the two immediately strike up a relationship, everything is put on pause when Victoria gets the opportunity to move to Germany for work. And while she's away, Ted cheats on her with Robin, ending the relationship for the first time. During the 7th season, Victoria reappears, but makes it clear to Ted that his continued involvement with Robin and Barney, despite the trio's awkward combination of romantic entanglements, is just too weird. However, at the end of that season, Ted and Victoria reconnect on the day of her wedding, and she leaves her boyfriend for him, restarting their relationship once again. In the end, Ted and Victoria aren't meant to be, and Victoria returns to Germany after she presents Ted with an ultimatum that he must stop talking to Robin, and he refuses. At least Victoria got to move abroad and keep living out her culinary dreams. We'll call it a win. There's no denying that Ted Mosby gets one of the best endings of anybody on the show, but considering how difficult his character can be to handle at times, this is ultimately a pretty frustrating outcome. In the end, Ted gets everything he wanted and then some, despite the fact that he shows himself to be selfish, self-righteous, and entirely overbearing toward the women in his life. Nice guys really do finish last, and emotionally manipulative soft boys sometimes notch a win. After striking up a perfect yet doomed relationship with Tracy, Ted seems entirely settled as a single dad, and it seems as if he's put his idealistic, stop-at-nothing romantic attitude in the rearview mirror. However, after his kids encourage him to resume his quest for Robin, a graying Ted is back to his old tricks. Standing outside of Robin's window and triumphantly holding up the blue French horn he stole for her way back in the first season. Ted may be the show's main character, but he can also be its most grating, so to see him get both a perfect marriage and the woman of his dreams feels slightly unearned. Out of everyone on How I Met Your Mother, few characters deserved a perfect ending as much as Lily, the kind, sweet glue that holds the entire gang together time and time again. Lily always looks out for her friends and loves her husband and baby son Marvin, but after spending years as a kindergarten teacher, she finds herself yearning for greater professional achievement later in life. Luckily, Lily gets offered the job of her dreams as an art consultant, but unluckily, it requires moving to Italy, which causes friction between her and Marshall. When push comes to shove, Lily and Marshall, along with Marvin and their newborn daughter Daisy, do spend a year in Italy, which doesn't prevent Marshall from pursuing his dreams either. Later, they have a second daughter. After years of helping others, from her students to her friends, Lily finally gets to live her best life in Italy as a professional art consultant, a dream years in the making. Far and away the sweetest character on the show, Marshall Erickson is defined by three things: his love for Lily, his devotion to his friends, and his quest to save the world from certain doom as an environmental lawyer. Marshall's ambitions finally pay off when, during the show's 9th and final season, his application to become a judge is approved, and he is offered a recently vacated seat on the bench. This incites a rift between Marshall and Lily, however, as he doesn't immediately tell her that their move to Italy conflicts with his opportunity to become a New York judge. In the end, when Marshall finds out Lily is pregnant with Daisy, he immediately agrees to follow her to Italy and continues working in corporate law until another seat on the bench opens up for him. Happily, one does upon their return to New York, and Marshall is ultimately elected to the New York State Supreme Court in 2020, fulfilling his dreams of helping the world. The only recurring character on How I Met Your Mother to appear in all of the show's 9 seasons, driver Ranjit Singh is present for nearly every significant moment in each main character's life. This also means Ranjit is present for a lot of the gang's immature nonsense, including plenty of fights and squabbles. And even a bizarre subplot where Lily inadvertently reveals that she had a sex dream about Ranjit, much to Marshall's shock and disgust. After years of driving what appears to be the same 5 people around New York City and the surrounding area, future Ted reveals in Season 9 that Ranjit ultimately starts an incredibly successful limousine group and gets rich. That's great, because no one on this show deserves happiness more than Ranjit.
Behind the scenes of Friends tapings, there were some major misses that had the live audience roaring for all the wrong reasons, as the cast fumbled with their lines, took occasional potshots at each other, and simply could not stop cackling about any of it. What do we smell? In the Season 4 episode, the one with Rachel's crush, it's Monica Geller's fresh-baked cookies that entice all her friends to come across the hall. Before the scene could play out as fans remember, though, there were a few takes that didn't quite make it. The cast and crew had Matt LeBlanc to thank for bringing a bit of toilet humor to the mix, responding to Lisa Kudrow's line, "What do I smell?" with a coy ad-lib.
What do I smell?
Sorry. Needless to say, that wasn't in the script. This little ad-lib ended up wasting a lot of time as LeBlanc and co-star David Schwimmer simply couldn't get past his one-line fart joke to finish out the scene.
What do I smell?
Eventually, they managed to collect themselves for long enough to make it through the scene, but it took a few tries, including one where they got so close.
What do I smell?
I don't know. It smells good.
Ross didn't live with Joey and Chandler for long, but he wore out his welcome pretty quickly thanks to that air purifier, his obnoxious hand gestures, and the many, many boxes of stuff he left scattered across their living room. The latter does prove to be a boon for the boys in Season 5's The One Where Ross Moves In, once Joey realizes he can build a fort with Ross's stuff.
So why don't you be a grown-up and come and watch some TV in the fort?
In the closing scene, Chandler comes home to find them playing cowboys and Indians in an innocent, if culturally insensitive, moment. The blooper reel version, though, now that was some racy stuff.
What are you guys doing? Nothing.
Friends fans have often wondered why Ross saw so little of his son Ben throughout the series, but perhaps this blooper reel can shed some light on that creative decision. In The One Where Old Yeller Dies, Ross is frustrated by how many firsts he's been missing in the boy's life, and he wants to witness at least one of those major milestones for himself. To that end, Ross tries to coax the toddler into saying his very first word during his visit. As Ross takes Ben to see Rachel at the coffee shop, he tries to talk the baby into saying "Dada" to no avail.
Can you say Dada?
Oh.
Look, I'm gonna tell your mommies you said it anyway, so you might as well try.
No luck, huh?
No.
For a couple of takes, however, the tiny actor portraying Ben didn't quite stick to the script.
You know, you might as well say it because I told you.
The good news is that baby is growing up to be sharp as a tack. The bad news is it's the last thing the writers of this episode wanted to happen.
Your mommies, you said it anyway, so you might as well try. Huh? Yeah, he's saying Dada.
Who knew Matthew Perry had such a penchant for crappy jokes? There were several instances on Friends when Chandler would emerge from the bathroom for one reason or another, and as the blooper reels reveal, a lot of times the actor went off script to make jokes about what he was doing in there.
You girls got a measuring tape?
Eventually, Courtney Cox decided to play along, and the results were pretty great. While filming a scene for The One with the Nap Partners in which Monica confronts Chandler for breaking up with a girl over her weight, he was scripted to be bothered by her knock at the bathroom door. Instead, he took another approach.
Honey, you gotta see this. This is like the size of my arm.
Cell phones have been ruining takes since they could fit in people's pockets, but at least the results are often funny. During production on The One with Joey's New Brain, Jennifer Aniston got a legitimate call on her cell phone while she and Lisa Kudrow were filming a fight about a different cell phone. To quote Phoebe, "What are the chances?"
Well, if somebody's actually here. Hi! Let me call you right back. I'm doing a scene.
That wasn't the only cellular mishap on the series, though. Aniston was also the recipient of another unexpected dial-in while taping her birthday scene on the set of The One Where They All Turned 30, which just goes to show that she was, as widely reported, very popular during her time on the show.
Better to be over the hill.
It comes with a phone.
Sometimes a blooper isn't an accident. Sometimes it's a prank. In The One with the Secret Closet, Joey has to take a pregnant Rachel to the hospital after she begins experiencing Braxton Hicks contractions. Ross shows up late, complaining about the distance between himself and his baby's mother-to-be. Schwimmer had a hard time hitting his cues for the scene, though, so Matt LeBlanc and Jennifer Aniston decided to pull a prank on him. After Schwimmer missed his mark and had to go back out of frame to try again, the two decided to hide and let him walk into an empty room just to see what he'd do. Later, when he forgot his line during a take, Aniston playfully laid into him for bringing the whole gang down.
And at the movie theater.
What happened to you? You used to be able to act.
I know.
Remember Joey's disastrous noodle soup commercial audition with the kid who was a more competent actor than him?
Soup. I mean noodle soup. I mean soup.
Come on!
Well, life imitated art in that regard because Cole Sprouse, who portrayed Ben in the later seasons of the show, seemed to be the only one who'd memorized the script. While shooting a scene with Jennifer Aniston for The One with the Truth About London, for example, Sprouse confidently fed her the missing line when she forgot what to say.
Now, what is my first line?
What did we agree?
Okay.
Then when he shared the screen with David Schwimmer for a scene in The One with the Holiday Armadillo, Sprouse had to again remind his co-star of what to say next.
You're punctually.
Oh, yeah.
So don't take any clue. All right, we'll go back
I know all of his lines.
All right, let's go back to
Chandler and Monica's storyline in The One where Ross meets Elizabeth's dad is kind of a throwaway. The two have a silly misunderstanding over what time they're supposed to meet up for a mini-date, and their snafu becomes fodder for Phoebe's next book chapter. Their argument doesn't make many Friends fans' lists of best moments, of course, but perhaps it would have if it had gone down the way it did in the bloopers.
Chandler, we said we would meet at the coffee house at 6.
We said 7, you dumb bag.
Of all the cast members who were paired for two-person scenes throughout Friends, Lisa Kudrow and David Schwimmer had to be among the most entertaining. Phoebe is never afraid to call Ross on his worst decisions, and since she seems to be the one woman in his life who is neither a relative nor an ex, she's often his go-to friend for unbiased advice. The two also get into a lot of weird situations together, including the time that they each date half of a divorcing couple and start bickering with each other in The One with the Engagement Picture. As their arguments started to mimic the separated couple, David Schwimmer and Lisa Kudrow had a lot of trouble keeping it together and finishing their scenes.
And she uses sex as a weapon.
Fine.
Things got so out of hand that Schwimmer suggested shooting the scene line by line, which Kudrow seemed game for. Apparently, it had worked out pretty well for her before.
We'll just do the scene one line at a time.
Yeah, once.
I'll let you.
I got an Emmy.
As friends, Joey and Chandler definitely find comfort in each other. They're known to hug so often that they eventually have to ask themselves if it's getting out of hand in the season 6 episode, The One with the Mac and Cheese. During shooting, all of the repeated hugs and back rubs started to get under their skin.
Hey, while we're here, anything else?
Get off me.
Then, things really went off the rails when the Matts decided to lean into the discomfort of prolonged physical contact.
What's that in your pocket?
After so many seasons of bringing the Friends cast to life, the actors started to know their characters all too well. While filming a scene for the season 8 episode, The One with the Birthing Video, David Schwimmer realized mid-line just how much of a dope his character was for letting his pregnant ex-wife move in with him while he had a new girlfriend, and neither he nor Lisa Kudrow could stop laughing about it.
I knew it! I knew I wasn't crazy!
For a while, all the actor can seem to do is sit there and think about Ross's bad decisions. Eventually, Kudrow has to ask him if he's really so surprised.
All right, ready.
Have you ever seen the show?